On behalf of Hindustan Times Media Limited, I welcome you all to the first Hindustan Times Shine HR Summit that brings together policy and corporate leaders to examine how to drive productivity in the Indian workplace by harnessing individual and organizational productivity. So to begin the proceedings today, may I invite the Hindustan Times Special Initiatives Editor, Ms. Vasantha Angamuthu, to please welcome all our guests, speakers and participants, and to tell us the imperatives for us to be here.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of corporate India. We have great hopes that it will become as anticipated an annual event as the prestigious Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. We often hear of India becoming a global superpower, but we also hear stories about Indian companies needing to evolve out of a jugaad culture, focus on project management, on innovation, and enabling work-life balance. The work-life balance thing seems to be really big in corporate India. And if the Indian economy is to reach its potential, every member of the workforce will need to look at these issues to increase productivity. This will require action from both employer and employees. We want to create this platform for the big conversations around productivity, organizational culture, and the impediments to making India a great place to work. It is in this scenario that we set down the agenda for the first Hindustan Times Shine HR Summit. We invite you to treat this as a forum where you can help rewrite the HR paradigm and policies, and where we can all partner together to make India a better place to work, one workplace at a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasantha. I'd like to request Mr. Sandeep Bhushan, Business Head Shine, to please make the presentation. Sandeep manages the key web businesses of HD Media Limited, namely Shine.com, HindustanTimes.com, and LiveMint.com. He was earlier the COO of Mint and specializes in driving business models for profitability, creating new business, and has, of course, worked across different media platforms. Sandeep.
Very good afternoon, all of you. It's great to have a lot of us here. We're saying for HR to deliver, the organization has to align. It is not HR's job to deliver everything for the organization when it comes to people. The organization has to be built around it, and then, of course, somebody's got to be the first person responsible, and many of them are in the room here. While HT's been talking about HR and recruitment, that's how it used to be done 20 years ago, which was newspapers is where you put the ad out, you got employees. Over a period of time, the world's changed, and we've also been sort of working around that whole change. Therefore, we have a full recruitment business around the Shine theme, a website which is now pretty large, getting close to 1 crore candidates. And yes, I'm number 4 at 1 crore candidates. That's the scale of India. The top 3 ways of driving productivity is facilities, training, and rewards. All of us who've seen Gallup know that this is pretty much the broad Gallup engagement play. Yeah? So this is the space it is in some order, but no surprises here. Further, we've looked at facilities from 3 lenses. Facilities for the individual, facilities that create an equitable workplace, and facilities that create a cultural space for me to do my best in. The question is, if we are trying to pull from the pool available as corporate India and churn that for productivity and financial rewards for the company and the stakeholders, are we creating spaces for every kind of worker class? Women is just one example. There could be various other examples. Yeah. So clearly, interesting gap. You knew this, of course. Yeah. But when you make the point like this, sometimes it drives home harder. Moving on quickly to training. 2 dimensions, quantity and quality. You ask an HR managers, of course we train everybody very well. 77% have an HR training calendar, but go closer and 90% is induction, 85 is functional, 70 is soft skill, 63 is external, 26 is trainee's choice, or where the trainee has raised a hand. Yeah? But this is not surprising. Yeah, this is broadly the trend. We know that industries such as IT, our benchmarks are global defining. In fact, the rest of the world is catching up, especially in Southeast Asia. But we also know that in many other industries, we're not talking this language. The other part of training and assessment is thinking beyond functional skills. Of course, the guy has to know Java to code. Of course, the guy needs to know the HR policy to write the PMP strategy, and so on and so forth. Interesting thing is, 25% will say now that innovation is interesting. It's a bit of a surprise for me. Yeah? Well, we've been talking innovation, but 25% to say, hey, listen, this is top-level thing that we want to assess people on, recruit people on. The question is, reward people on? Question mark, question mark. Question on rewards to ask is, are our rewards driving motivation? And are our rewards linked to company goals? So everybody gets everything and the company goes nowhere. That's also a possibility. So these are two questions we will seek to get the answer for from this survey, but of course it is for us to reflect on whether we're doing the best job that is possible in our spaces. We hope you have a lovely day. My job is to make sure it's time well spent. Yeah, that's my commitment to at least us, and we hope you will partner in that commitment. We will have the panels. I told you we'll have some fun, we'll have some commitment, and we'll try and make it very, very sharp. Please do not let the panel go. Thank you.
We now have 4 industry leaders join us for an interaction, and as they walk up, I'll introduce them to you. Mr. Vineet Nair, Vice Chairman and CEO of HCL Technologies. Mr. Ashok Reddy, MD and co-founder TeamLease Services, India's leading staffing solutions company. Mr. Vikram Chachi, Executive Vice President, DHR India. And Mr. Dilip Chenoy, Managing Director and CEO, National Skill Development Corporation. To moderate this session, we have with us the author, columnist, blogger, and editor HT Business, Mr. Gautam Chikkermani.
First, my objection to the word harnessing talent. We are not dealing with horses and dogs to try and talk about harnessing. If you were to attend a session called Harnessing Your Kids, how would you feel about it? Small subunit of management starts at home. And if you reflect closely how the management architecture has changed at home, you will have a lot of answers on how can you get the best out of talent. The way my father used to handle me by saying, this is what I want, and it better be done by this time. And the way I handle my kids is by collaboration, by participation, by involvement, by giving them equal stake on the table. When you come back to office, that is not the way we behave. We still behave in that old command and control fashion. And therefore, the first aspect of talent management or harnessing talent or whatever word you use is to understand that life has changed, aspirations changed, people have changed, and therefore you have to change, and therefore you have to start asking all the right questions.
If you want a new India in 2022, if you want a productive and sustainable, competitive India, I think the onus is on industry to lead the change. The government has given you this opportunity, and I think the time to act is now. I think the skill sets, what you're talking about here, so if you had leadership, great. Leadership quality, it actually worked. If you projected a leader, it worked. Second is that the ability to create an organization structure right from the grassroots till the top and align the entire organization to the same vision and not have discordance.
The way we look at talent itself has changed over the past 10 years. And it is increasingly rapidly changing at a much faster pace today because we see technology bringing in a lot of change in attitudes, in the way we work, in the way we communicate, and so on.
Employee satisfaction surveys, which we do once a year, and we give it a lot of credence. My suggestion is don't. If we couldn't predict the exit polls right, do you think we can predict employee satisfaction right? So therefore, the satisfaction changes every day.
Getting that element of a fitment, and we keep tagging that to what we tend to say the 3E problem. The employment, how do you match the availability of supply to demand? The employability issue, how do you ensure you repair or you intervene to set people towards the skill sets that the industry requires? And the element of education, the pipeline. How do you educate people right to being productive?
When we look at this whole topic of how do we get the best out of our people, I would say the first is understand that you do not know enough, ask the right questions, and not be in the business of defining point B, but to be in the business of enthusing, encouraging, enabling your employees, your managers, your leaders, so that they can define the point B for those people. And that would generate enough enthusiasm and energy for people to find their own learning and for you to get the best out of the talent, instead of defining a cage which they have to hang like monkeys And as soon as you give them a banana, they have to turn turtle. That is not that is harnessing talent, and that's not, I think, what you want to do in your companies.
If you want a new India in 2022, if you want a productive and sustainable, competitive India, I think the onus is on industry to lead the change. The government has given you this opportunity, and I think the time to act is now.
If we could define geography-wise the skill gaps which we have, and make sure that everybody is aware of it, and make sure the government only comes out with certification processes, then how can you be a certified driver, a certified plumber, a certified carpenter, and make it as part of the 10+2 education programs, and then force the industry, or the industry on its own starts educating people so that they can get the government certification, which is what I call a sellable skill. We will solve what we call the grassroots skill problem at those community levels. So there are a lot of what I call government-industry partnership which need to come in, but from my expectations, I do not expect the government to do anything in this area, predominantly because the sets of challenges are so large that by the time they come to education, it will be too late for the country's competitive advantage.
Fully in tune with everything that you say as far as employment is concerned, except the fact that when you say that education is equal to job. So I think very often education is just...
There is knowledge. I'm not disputing that element at all. And I think there's a large element of the population that looks at education in order to find a job.
I think there is very interesting thing about the aspirational quotient. Everybody wants to become a graduate. But if all 700 million people become graduates, the aspirations, the job levels in the industry skill pyramid collaborative cannot accommodate that many graduates. So you have to look at different solutions going forward.
We have a whole bunch of educated people, and the delusion is these guys are good for employment. Why don't people who are points of who can create leverage, raising this in an effective manner, and the government listening to you people?
There is a need to make changes on that front. 90% of our education is bookish and knowledge, whereas 90% of the industry requirement is vocational skills. The aspect of addressing the education pipeline is something that there is an open and continuous dialogue happening on. And it's very policy driven, so there's a governmental intervention and involvement required. But the short-term solution to that is getting involved in skill redevelopment or development, which makes people ready for a job.
Today there is a huge gap in talent available vis-a-vis skills required by the industry-academia partnership. What method do you propose to bridge the gap?
Is every company spending 5% of their revenue on vendor development? And if they were, and you look at the total revenue size of listed companies in Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange, you have a huge surplus which education institutions will not be able to digest. The second is, how do we solve the problem? Do we solve the problem by educating people in what we call deployable or employable skill, or defining certification courses?
The problem is that given the nature of the education system in India, the schooling system, the AICT, the engineering colleges, etc., it tends to get fragmented. And I think industry has to ensure that you work collaboratively, and you don't say that, I as a company will work with one space and the others could work with the other space, because that will only increase and accelerate the problem which is there.
Do you think job rotation is a very good idea to retain people? Do companies really encourage this in their organizations?
There are a lot of times where employees will are pretty clear about what track they want to follow. And it becomes clearer as they get on in terms of years of experience. The idea is to keep communicating. Whoever is your mentor or your coach or your supervisor should actually be constantly communicating with what your aspirations are. If that continues to happen, there is clarity that is driven in the mind of the employee. What being a technically or a subject matter expert can do to his or her career, and what being a generalist can do to his or her career. And a lot of companies are actually encouraging job rotations, whether it's line business, business to function, and that's how you will develop skills all around.
There is a question from somebody called Money. which has come on our web chat. It says, today there is a huge gap in talent available vis-a-vis skills required by the industry-academia partnership. What method do you propose to bridge the gap?
We have to develop the faith, as we develop with children, that there is no option but to hand over the baton to the employee and then do everything from a governance structure, from a measurement point of view, from balanced scorecard point of view, incentive structures. But there is no choice but to hand over the baton to the employee and then work hard so that he runs. And that's the only way we're going to win. The reason it has not moved, and I'm glad Dilip is listening to this, that we do not have a single source of inventory which we can go to, and we can invest in training those people for where we need to deploy. So you have to end up creating the skill inventory yourself, and that is purely based on the number of people who think HCL will hire and applying to HCL. And there is a significant gap in terms of the quality of people who are actually available and quality of people who apply to HCL and thus number of people who get selected. So, if we can, or whoever can take the initiative creating a skill inventory, and all it takes is maybe Shine to take out a pro bono advertisement and create the skill inventory for all the people to apply, and we have as an industry a skill inventory, a detailed skill inventory on a specific portal, I think our adoption of those people into our organization, which is good for our company, forget about its impact on the society, it is good for our company, I think will dramatically increase.
Taking a cue of what he just mentioned some time ago, that hiring heroes would give zeros, just wanted to check whether this would hold good for companies across industries who are hiring at top level. Can they afford not to hire heroes rather than risk hiring people at a lower level and then giving them a chance to grow up to become a hero one day?
I would say that in your organization, you should make up your mind in terms of what you want to be. Because if you attract heroes, then your organization culture has to be very ruthless. Then, your incentive structures, your organization, performance perish, all that stuff, which is typical of a large consulting company, right, where they fire 30% of their people. So you pay $1 million to everybody instead of paying $500,000, and you fire 30% of the people. Yes, you can make it work if you're happy with that kind of an organization. Or if you want to create a culturally rich organization, then you have to have a vision. You have to hire people who see a win of working with you.
Does these organizations which have been talking about innovation have the appetite to accept a failure from these people who come on board? Secondly, do they provide a platform for them to come and experiment or innovate abundantly? Or third, that they would come back and say that, look, we made a mistake after 6 months and this is not what we are game for.
So if you want to try and do innovation in your company, experiment this, that put those innovation ideas on a digital platform to vote, which is the way the Facebook generation really works. So if you put them to vote, automatically these ideas deselect themselves, and which is what we do. So we start with a team of 100 and ask them to vote for one idea. That 100 goes to 1,000, ask them to choose out of the 10 ideas only 2 ideas. That 1,000 goes to 10,000. They have to choose 5 ideas. So that's the way we build up to the top 10 ideas in the company, and we give a commitment that we will fund those ideas. By the time they become top 10 ideas in the company, 2 things happen. Number 1, everybody is thinking about ideas. Number 2, everybody is aware of at least 100 innovative ideas in the company. Number 3, they are very clear they want to be in the top 10.
Suggest some ways to bridge the gap between formal education and employability skills in creating job-ready graduates. And how are corporates serious about partnering with institutions in Tier 2 and Tier 3 colleges to help graduates become more employable?
The element of quality councils that are coming into play, where industry has a say in the skill set required. There's an educational curriculum that one needs to go through, but can we complement that educational curriculum with a certain element of skill, vocational employability skill that the industry is looking for becomes the key variable, and how that gets structured into the educational content or as a training program over and above the degree program is really where the industry steps in to prepare the student pipeline for the industry requirements in the long run. And I think that's really where there's a huge element of work happening right now in trying to get the participation and involvement of the companies going.
Well, I think your point, that is heroes being zero, has attracted the audience a lot. And when you say that you are hiring aspiring heroes, and when they become a hero, do you have any proposal or any plans to retain them or to make them a superhero in your organization, or how organizations should be handling the aspiring heroes who have become the heroes to make them a superhero?
I would believe that the trick of the zero culture or the aspiration culture is that always give a man a job he thinks he can't do. So as an organization, you should always be in the business of giving challenges to people who they have not done before. And therefore, this whole system of job rotation we talked about, promoting people before time rather than after time is very, very important. The organization, and it happened to HCL also, can very quickly get trapped in history and get trapped in what I call a rear view mirror. And there is where the hero culture sets in. First, in the eyes of the CEO, the moment the CEO starts saying that we are the greatest thing in the mankind, right, that permeates down to the organization, and that is set up for disaster, because then it is not just one heroes, it's hundreds and thousands of heroes there. So therefore, the first language of the company is that there is significant amount to be done, and we are actually on the brink of disaster. So that urgency gets created. The moment that urgency gets created, then people start looking for challenges, to problems to solve. So one is a company which is gloating itself how great they are. Another is a company which is always in perpetually anxiety of problems we solve. And therefore, the company which is in problems we solve create enough challenges. And once the challenges create, there are enough opportunities for heroes to try and deploy themselves in solving the problems. And if you can deploy them in places where they feel inadequate, then you have a great culture. So when you think about organization, we were talking about human capital, but you bring up an interesting point. Culture of the organization is the core difference. And culture gets created around the people.
Are people today, in the restructuring of the way organizations function, want all-rounders in every function?
If you hire heroes, you get zeros. If you hire people who have aspirations that they are going to build up that last 20%, you create a great team.
How can organizations motivate the mentors to take their role of mentor seriously? What is in it for them to devote time and energy towards mentoring?
We ask the rarest of commodities of the mentors, which is their time. It has to be driven as part of the people vision or the people strategy of every organization, and that's what distills great organizations from the others. There is no other way to motivate mentors. The only way they can get motivated is self-motivation and having seen a success track record of mentoring actually having worked well for the business, for business results, and therefore for people as well. Even in a reviving economy like the United States, the fact is that over the next 5 to 7 years, 80 million baby boomers, who are large part of their working population, will actually retire. There are only 40 million what you call Gen Xers now who are ready to step up to take their place. In China, our experience has been that we actually try and advise clients to go in for serious succession planning, primarily because most Chinese organizations, even if you are multinational organizations in China, need you or prefer you to be of Chinese origin, and you must know the language. That is fast going out of the window because the number of Chinese or Americans or any other folks of Chinese origin who wanted to come back to the mainland has run dry. There is such a huge gap in terms of filling up those positions as you go up the organization that we are actually advising clients to seriously look at succession planning and not get into this exercise every time of going out to fill that position. I think we are at a much better place, and the only reason I say that is we firmly believe most of our talent is socially adaptable. It has good access to the one binding language that we use for business across the world. It still is a big advantage. The Western expats are actually looking at Asia because this is where growth is for them, and if they have a few years left, this is where they will, make their little pot of gold.
The
companies could spend a lot of money searching for the right talent. Any specific you want to say how that time to react went down?
So one of the things that we've experimented with a couple of companies is bucketed hiring. So I'll give you the example of a company we worked with. There's a benchmark of a particular quality that they want to get. So we said that can we break the benchmark of quality into discrete measurable parameters. And for each of the parameters, can we look at what is the hiring grade, what is immediately trainable, and what is midterm and what is long term. So we bucketed people scientifically into these buckets. Intelligent thing that this company did was they used people on the production floor, they used training, and they got people in talent acquisition together to define these benchmarks extremely accurately. So by doing this, they actually managed to move from about 100 hires to about 400 hires.
If you want leaders to really lead this growth, lead this enrichment, the kind of leaders we need are the ones who are probably innovative, who are really looking at newer ways of growth, coming up with newer solutions, newer products, different things to really grow, because after some time, whatever you're doing is going to kind of end at a maturity. So you've got to come up with new things. You've got to really have people who are, thinking out of the box, working with a different kind of ecosystem to grow. You also need people who are more global in their own approach. And the third big one is really all about scale. How do I really grow big scale? How do we really grow leaders? And if I look at leaders, how do I make innovative leaders, leaders who've got a global mindset and who who can manage scale?
How does retail industry specifically put value on talent acquisition?
There has to be a sustained skill continuum, which is shown to the individual from the moment the individual enters at the lowest level in retail company to a certain next supervisory level. And that continuum scale has to be built. And around that skill continuum, I think there could be milestones towards which the individual is directed, which helps in continuous skill building and an engagement with the employee through that process, which helps the individual also move up, develop skills, be more relevant at different levels in the organization and in a retail company, and ensures that organization invests in doing so.
Every employee can be an innovator. What is the balance you look for when recruiting in terms of skill sets when innovation is not available?
So I think you can do innovation in many things, even small improvements in what you do, your processes, ideas, etc. So I think innovation is everywhere. I think the competency is needed for creating an enterprise, a discontinuity, which is really all about taking the organization to a new level. That's something which will have to be built over time, and it's not just being creative, but it needs people who firstly are creative, who are able to work using technology and within the ecosystem. Also working with partners to make the results happen. So it's not just coming up with an idea, but thinking about it, having the right kind of commercial kind of model around it and making it and monetize it. So I think it's a tougher one. And that's the competency that I don't think many people have. So you've got to build them. And that I think you don't need all of them to have. I think that you need a few people to have. And they have to go through the right experiences of really taking risks, of being in turnaround situations, of actually working with different partners and being exposed to the external environment. Those then make a few people leaders who will really create the innovative growth for you.
How are PSUs reacting to this competitive market and talent acquisition? I mean, the way we understand PSUs, they are very structured, bureaucracy and all. How are they reacting and they bringing a change to it?
In public sector, when we started, let us see why we started. We started, it should create employment, we should contribute, but no question of asking anyone performance management. Because my money was coming from the government. I was getting the budgetary support. Whatever money I spent, it comes from the government. Suddenly, one day we were asked, no further budgetary support, please be on your own. What we did, I take the example of my own company, why to go others. Today we are a Maharatna company and we were operating, please take it, 4 million tons of production with 2.5 lakhs of people. From that, today we are producing 14 million tons with 1.1 lakh. In 2 years' time, we will be 23 million tons, 4 million tons with 90,000 to 1 lakh people. So it is all happening from within. When we were thrown into this, there are certain restructuring which took place. Our people are, if not better, as good as anywhere else. Today, last 10 years, we are giving a profit which is in the range of 6 to 7,000 crores. So this is the efficiency which has been built up. There is nothing wrong in the public sector. What is required is a level play.
Any talent acquisition conversation has three elements. We're talking of quantity of talent, we're talking of quality, and we're talking of the cost at which the talent is acquired.
Global mindset is also one of the key competencies. So what are some of the best practices to develop global mindset for Indian companies?
I think firstly it's all about managing diversity. I think that's number one, to create that. Number two, I think one of the things is that understanding somewhere in your mind that whatever has led to your recipe for success, that you've been very successful here, will not be successful somewhere else. For example, you've been a great sales manager in India. You've been a great sales manager in Uttar Pradesh in terms of growing the market. But the same technique may not work for you in Kenya or in Nigeria or in Uganda. So you've got to kind of keep looking at differently. Which then brings to the key one, which is all about what they call as learning agility, in terms of not going with preset models, but understanding and learning on the job there.
The video resume is going to replace the paper resume soon?
It looks like a logical step forward. In fact, we've experimented with a client of ours where we've used video interviewing tool, which is very similar to a video resume, and that's given them huge benefits in terms of looking at the candidate interview, a short resume, short introduction kind of a thing, remotely and also asynchronously. So I think there's huge potential in doing that, especially as organizations in India are hiring at a fast clip and across geographies.
Why government bodies are not able to hire people from A-grade institutes?
Let me tell you one very interesting situation. That's not a generalized one, little lighter sense. I was in the middle level management, and we had gone to IIM Calcutta. Two of my top-notch officials from the company, one who was heading the marketing functions, a vast organization, and number two, the position that I today occupy, from the corporate office, from the HR side, we had gone to make a presentation and get some interest in the IIM Calcutta. Let me tell you what we went through. We waited 1.5 hours, and this was organized by them, not by us. And the placement officer was going around the hostels, because I know that institute campus very well, to see that at least we don't feel embarrassed that we came all the way and people are not coming. Ultimately, and he could manage, because I knew the professors very closely, we have been interacting regularly on some issue or other. He managed 100, 110 people. That time the days of Mr. Krishnamurthy, a stalwart in the manufacturing industry and a name to reckon with.
Elizabeth, you represent a retail chain, which again is very close to our hearts in the sense of what Fab India stands by. So how do you link that? What are the elements of employer brand for Fab India?
Thank you, Esther, for letting me know that Fab India is close to your heart. That exactly is what our employer branding has been able to achieve with not just people outside, that is our customers, but people within the organization. We strive to ensure that when people say, I belong to Fab India, they truly mean what they're saying, that they have a sense of ownership for what the company is all about.
Yashan, I'm just moving this side of the table. Alok was talking about the employee experience, about how the business is evolving. Philips itself has evolved so much. How is that evolution translates in employer brand? What are the elements that you've built as an employer brand?
Well, it's an evolution which happens, I don't think so every decade, but even every 5 years, okay? And the way we look at it, when we started as a company just making filament, lamps way back in 1981 in a factory in Eindhoven in Netherlands, to becoming the biggest lighting company in the world today, to becoming one of the biggest lighting companies in the healthcare today, of course, in the diagnostic and the equipment space, not in pharmaceuticals, but healthcare. And fast, still continuing to be one of the biggest companies in consumer lifestyle and consumer entertainment. It's a journey, okay? And what you have to do is, and what we do is, we continuously keep measuring our employer value proposition. But employer brand, when it comes in Philips, we specifically look at it, that's something that you create for your existing employees, for the extended families of the employees, for the talent which is in schools and colleges today, which is going to come into the workforce, which could be our employees. So that's what the connotation of an employer brand for us is.
How BPO is changing perception to be able to attract people, because there is, the question implies that there is a lack of attractiveness of the industry. So that's the first one. And the second one is, when you have such a high attrition, how do you keep on going, executing a plan when you kind of restarting fresh again and again and again? So if you can combine both questions.
The reality on the ground is that career decisions or a decision to join a industry or an organization is not necessarily taken by the individuals or the young folks. And I think that's what typically happens. BPO in the list of priorities perhaps is right at the bottom of that pile, if you like. Reality also is that the folks many a times who walk into our premises or in the premises of I guess any BPO within the country, they are actually in a grazing or a browsing mode that, yeah, I'm here today, am I really looking at coming back here tomorrow? And it's a function of what they hear, what they see, how they experience it. So there is perhaps a 10% of the the entire group that walks in, they're actually testing it out. What you do speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say. So just saying is not enough. So what you do speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say. So in the end, the experience of those folks and the fact that, let me share an example. In a lot of our learning programs, we used to earlier bring in a senior leader who would do what you typically term as executive signaling and let people hear about how they're going to benefit and they must apply what they learn. We've changed it to bringing in actually a frontline person. We've changed it to bringing in someone who went through that same experience maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, applied and got the benefits. And what we see is, that's an immediate validation of what is being done out there.
When the product brand is going to vanish, what would be the fate of an employee whose employment bonding is also going to be vanished? What would be the role of the employer branding then?
It's a case where perhaps when we were talking of challenges, Esther talked to Elizabeth, I think a similar kind of challenge can also come in the life of a corporate, because there are good times, there are bad times, there are sunny days, there are rainy days. And I think why we go far, 8-9 was one such year which shook the industry globally. All global economies faced that deep recession. India only faced a slowdown, but still we reacted very badly. Now we are talking of employer branding. You are raising this one specific question of a product vanishing. I am saying the business is getting challenged, right? 8-9, the businesses got challenged. So what do? I think what we did at Maruti when we talk of employer branding, every such adverse business circumstances will also offer a silver lining provided we identify it. Maruti identified that companies were refusing their promises at the campuses, negotiating salaries to go down at the campuses. We aggressively went for campus hiring at that point of time as per original plan, original schedule, same compensation, same respect, same numbers. The second perspective is we invested heavily in training at that point of time. Now what happened in the process? Strong HR leadership emerged as a protector, positive, supportive, high credibility for Maruti. So campuses who were not interested to invite Maruti, like MDI Gurgaon, they used to say that you can't afford us. Prior to 8-9, were requesting Maruti to kindly come to the campus because employer image went up. So not only, as Elizabeth said, making promises and fulfilling, but also consistently handling even crisis situations with the same values, with the same care, if we are going to talk of employer branding. We were fastest to recover back the business within 4 months of that 8-9 crisis. And during that stage, we only requested for people to go for stretch role, creativity, suggestions. So 185,000 implemented suggestions and 148 crores of net saving to the company without any downsizing. That's the way perhaps you will have to look at this challenge. It's very easy to react. Product vanished, sack the employee. We don't need them, bench them. It's very easy. If any person can do it, then where is the kind of HR credibility? Where is the leadership perspective? Where is you walk the talk?
I'd like to add to this, through bad times, through adverse times, it is your positive employer branding and the employee value proposition that you've been consistently delivering that comes to your rescue. We had a similar experience in Fab India. Consistently, year on year, we'd been sharing profits. The company was extremely generous. Whenever it did well, every employee benefited. But in that crucial year, when things were not so great, we still made profits, but we did not achieve the numbers that we had set out to achieve. We did take some drastic decisions, but you see the support that we got from every employee was, and at the lower levels, that's where you anticipate some pain areas. At that level, the message that came back to us was senior management. At every year when the company has done great, you've shared your profits with us. This year, we've not done that well. We're happy to share the risks, the loss. So that trust, which I think has been one of the greatest strengths of Fab India, quality of Fab India, the trustworthiness, whether it's a product or what we say, we delivered right through. And that is really what came to our support when we had to take some tough decisions. So it's not a one-off event. It's something that you're living every day, all through the years, that helps build the employer brand.
It is about most organizations wanting to do something, and as Elizabeth said and as I had said, what you are, what you want to be, and how you are perceived. Measuring these things and bringing it together. That's important. What I disagree with you is that not many Indian companies are doing it, and there are not many great Indian multinational brands. That's where I disagree with you. The reason I say this is because, of course, we spoke about the companies that we represent, but in the very boardrooms where we sit in these companies, we benchmark Tata's as one of the formidable employer brands, okay, globally. It's a fact. Now, when you talk about being a caring organization, when you talk about being an ethical organization, here's this Indian brand, which is an employer brand, not just as a corporate brand, which is one of the most caring and one of the most ethical organizations. You saw what happened, after the Taj incident in Bombay. Mr. Ratan Tata or the management of Taj never wanted to get any publicity or mileage out of what they did for the employees after that incident or for their customers. But they just did it because they are Tatas. It's a part of their DNA. Secondly, I don't really treat Mr. Siddiqui's company as a multinational company. I think it is an Indian, my first car, even today I have a car which is a Maruti. The reason I buy Maruti is not because of Suzuki, I buy it because it is Maruti. It's a fact. I mean, I can say this as a proud customer of that company. So there are Indian companies of people who are sitting here. I mean, Fab India, if you ask me, it is Indian. So there are, and I can go on naming. Okay, there are fabulous and fantastic companies. Max, okay. You're seeing where Aditya Birla Group is going. Did you see the UIT employer branding survey which came out for 2011? Out of the top 20 companies in the world, there are 5 Indian companies out there. Hindustan Unilever, which has Hindustan in front of it, is ranked higher than Unilever Global. Wipro, Aditya Birla. I mean, these are the companies which are purely Indian-based multinationals which feature there. So that's where I would disagree with you a bit that Indian companies are not doing enough. Well, they're doing a lot, and they are become a benchmark for many large multinationals. So let's be wary of that. So I think that would be my response to what you said, but also, as you said first, it should be an endeavor and an effort of most companies, at least in HR we would like to believe so, because like marketing, which creates a consumer brand, I totally believe as an HR professional that as an HR professional, I create an employer brand.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.